Hello everybody, it's Allie here, and today we're going to be coloring the Sweet November Stamps Harvest Wishes stamp set. This is so adorable, and thank you, Amy. I actually won this set through Sweet November Stamps on the giveaway that they were doing, so make sure that you go to Instagram and Google or search Sweet November Stamps, and you too can get all kinds of inspiration. Okay, let's get to it. I'm going to start with our pumpkin. I always start dark, so we're going E07. And we're going to start with anywhere where our pumpkin is going to have some kind of shadow. And I'm even going to go around our walnut there. We're going to go up because this would continue down. Shadow here too, just a tiny one, all the way down behind the mousey mouse. I go up this and that little one there, and a tiny bit there, and then I'm also going to do right behind his ear, just a tiny bit, and then we're going to go to where the stem comes out. Add a little bit of shadow there. Just a tiny bit. Just helps make that pumpkin look rounded. Do a little bit behind that stem. A little bit in that valley. Go back to the other valley. Just a tiny, tiny bit here. And there we go. Okay, second darkest, YR16. And to make things blend, you want to go over top of that previous color. We're just making a nice fat line here. I'm going to kind of flick up as well and flick down. A little bit here, because remember, these are the concave part, the valleys in the texture, so they're going to be a little darker. Put a little bit down this side too, and then this part is going to be the pop out, or the mountain part of our fruit. Yes, pumpkins are fruit. And again, down those valleys. Go over that color. It helps blend. We have to go in a little bit darker too. You can always add color. Copics are transparent. You can just layer them up. And of course, if you start light and stay light, you can always go in and add darkness, because you can't take the dark away as easy as just going in and adding it some more in. Just going down those valleys again, just making sure I get enough of our darker color here. Don't forget the valleys in the back. So I created today's image by stamping my two little mice first. Then I created masks for them. I applied the masks and then stamped our walnut, created a mask for it, and then stamped the apple and the pumpkin. It's going to be a little bit of a shadow down there where our cute little stem is. Again, just building up our depth. Okay. Next lightest, Y38. And this color is going to be pretty much the majority of our pumpkin. I think I will come in and add a little bit darker orange in just to kind of bring out that kind of coppery red. I will go in and blend that a little bit more with something darker. And that's the beauty of Copic. You can absolutely go in and add color over top. Apparently this Y38 needs a little bit of ink. It's a little on the drier side. You will always get better inking if you have a marker that is fuller, obviously. Get better ink distribution just because you have more ink, right? Just leaving a highlight on some of the edges of our pumpkin. We still have one more light color to bring in. There we go. And you'll get a better blend again if you go over that previous color. Okay. The images from Sweet November are illustrated by Amy Young. She is extremely talented, and her images and people are the most adorable ever. So if you haven't checked them out, you'll definitely want to check out Sweet November stamps. Okay, I'm going to go in and see if I can find a little bit darker orange here, because I'm going to go back and do a little bit of blending. Oops. Whoop. YR18. Okay. And this is like a little bit brownier sided orange, and it's going to help blend that initial shadow orange that we used, our E07. And you can always go over this with your medium tones to help blend it too. That's the beauty of alcohol markers. There we go. And that, now it's not so stark a change. You can always go over it even more. You can go over it with another layer of your YR18 too. Just trying to get those two to talk together, to blend together, right? Yes. There we go. That's a little better, eh? A little bit smoother color. I do not always plan out my markers ahead of time. Sometimes it's like a spur of the moment pick, or a different choice, or I find a color that better suits what I've used previously on the image. You do you. Okay, we're just accentuating the back here, going in with that YR18 again. Okay, little teeny bit there, little teeny bit there. Okay, there we go. And let's go to our brightest yellow and our orange. I'm gonna go Y15, which is pretty much a yellow. So this is going to help keep your highlight nice and bright. And this is a fast one, because you just have to kind of go over the white space that you've left. You can go over some of your previous colors just to help blend. It's whether or not you kind of want a little bit of texture left from your previous markers that have been laid down. Sometimes you want the texture. I mean, pumpkins kind of have a grainy texture naturally. So it's okay to leave those marker marks. There we go. What a beautiful pumpkin. There, she looks lovely. All right, let's go on to the next thing here. Okay, we're gonna do our reds of our apple. You can do your apple any color. I just figured that red is gonna be super festive. Very rich color for fall, and who doesn't love a nice juicy red looking apple? We're going to start out with our darkest. This is an R17. Again, we're just mapping out shadows. Okay, there's going to be a shadow down where the stem is. Oop. Okay, and there's going to be a shadow underneath that apple where it sits on the ground too. Of course, the core is a different color. Just go in and map out. We may even come in with a darker. I think I'll just do this. A little bit of an edge too. Just a tiny bit here and there. There we go. Okay. We're going to go in with our mid-tone, R14. Now I want to leave a little bit of a highlight on this side here. So I'm just going to go over top of our darkest first. That helps blend. Okay. I'm going to leave a little bit of a white highlight there. Okay. Go down into the depths of where that stem is. There we go. This is going to be our majority color. Dun, 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 dun. Making this pretty easy here. Maybe we'll put a little bit of a highlight kind of on the top of the stem divot. And again, if you don't think this is dark enough red, because this is kind of like an orangey, has an orangey undertone, it's not like the super rich reds, you can absolutely go over this again. Okay, for the most part this is going to be completely red, this medium tone, or R14. I forgot to take the cap off my other end. Oh well. Okay, don't go over his tail. There we go. Okay. And again, if you have to go over it again, that's okay too. So I'm just going over that darker red just to blend it out. And you know what? I think this needs almost another coat. It's a little on the light side. So because things are transparent, you just go over it. It's simple as that. Trying to leave that highlight in there. Again. And again, we may decide to go in and accentuate our dark again. Okay, we're going to go in with an R08, and this really does show the color is a little bit more orange. We might lose our highlight by the looks of it. That's okay, we can bring it back. Because see how the orangey part is, it's almost darker than our previous color. So we're going to lose our highlight. But that's okay. We can bring it back in a second. Let me show you how. Okay, just to unify color, I'm going to go over everything here and everything here. And I'll show you how to bring in those highlights again. Okay. Almost done. I got a little oopsie there. That's okay. Okay. That one was a little bit darker than I had anticipated. So we lost our highlights, but that's what this wonderful marker is for. This is the 0, the Colorless Blender, and this is a must-have. So the job of the Colorless Blender is to push ink. It's not actually really a blender per se, it's more of an ink pusher. I always say it's ill-named. So you can go back and put those highlights back in just by going over top your image just a little bit. We're going to put a highlight in the back there. And just on the top. That looks good. The more you use that ink, the more it pushes the ink in the paper, and the less ink shows on the top, so it'll look whiter. It'll never be white though. Just know that you can't get rid of the color totally. You might have some staining. Okay, we are going to go in and do our stem. I'm going to start with my darkest, YG97. And we're going to put in the crevices. So if you've ever looked at a pumpkin stem, they tend to have some texture to them, their vine, and it tends to wrap around, and you can just get inventive with how thick or how thin your lines are, where it twists, all that jazz. Okay? Just get creative. And then we're going to put I think I'll start with a YG93 and just see how this goes here. Helps when you use the proper end. Oh, that looks good. Okay. And I'm just going over everything because that will slightly mute or soften those harder edges of those lines and just make it look a little bit more natural. Because it is a lighter ink, it has more of that blending solution in it, hence the 3 at the end. So it will push ink just the same as blender solution will. Okay. All right, on to the next thing. All right, next we're going to work on the walnut. We will come back to the apple. Okay, so this is E25, and we're going to go accentuate the kind of the grooves in the walnut. And I'm going to go over top of that black just because I didn't quite stamp it thoroughly enough or second time. So I'm just going to trace right over top of that ink. And I've used Memento Tuxedo Black. It's my favorite ink when stamping black images. Okay. We're going to go over the ones underneath as well as give a shadow because it's going to have a shadow underneath it. There we go, over top. Basically, I'm just thickening those shadows. Don't go over the rest of his tail, which I almost just about did. There we go, and then it's going to be completely dark in behind. And then we'll go just ever so slightly on those upper ones. And then I'm going to go right down the center of those, the joint between the two halves. Just to put a little bit of a shadow there. I'm going to pull the shadow to down this edge because this edge protrudes outside, where it's like your mountain part of your walnut there. Just a tiny bit down these ones. Again, I'm just going over top ever so slightly. A little bit of shadow there. Tiny bit of shadow in behind his tail. There we go. Okay, and then we're going to just soften those shadows with an E23. Just a tiny bit. Little bit of shading on the bottom. Don't go over his tail. Just soften that seam between the two halves again. I'm just widening basically. I'm going right over top. Little tiny bit here and there, and then we'll go in with an all over color in just a second here. Just widening that, softening that edges. Okay. Whee! Okay. There we go. We're looking good. Okay, and I want E35 looks good. And this is going to be like our all over color. And you could go a little bit lighter than this. This is fairly dark. We could put a highlight color on the top maybe. So do the majority of the bottom of the walnut, and we'll leave a tiny bit of highlight area, and then we'll go one more. Why not? Let's go E21. And I'm not going to take off the other cap. I'm just going to go over that area, and I'm going to go over a little bit of the top too, and that's just pushing a little bit of that ink back into the paper again, lightening that edge or the top of the walnut. There we go. Okay, walnut is done. Let's go finish our lovely little apple. Okay, we're going to assume our apple is white in the center. And of course, white is never white. If you look at an object, I see a boo-boo. Hang on. Okay, so I'm going to go and push some ink. So this is my 0 Colorless Blender, and I'm going to use it kind of like an eraser. Reds are very, very hard to erase. Like, seriously hard. So don't expect miracles. You can try. Okay, E51, and we're going to do our shadows. Just going to accentuate them down like such. You kind of just have to take liberties as to where your shadows are going to be. Try and look at a stamp and see what it's kind of telling you. Okay. Sometimes it gives you clues as to where those shadows might be by those, like that little design there. Okay. And then you can go, and we're going to do the back of those pieces too. Just going in, making sure that we got everything. This is also a piece of apple there too. Okay. We might deepen that color just a slight bit in some of the shadow areas. I'm going to go back to bring in some E21. We're going to go kind of in here and add a little bit more shadow color, especially in these little fellers here, because they almost appear like little pockets. Okay, so I'm just deepening some of those shadow areas. Okay, and this is totally your call. This one appears like it's almost starting to oxidize. If you've ever eaten an apple and the core is now exposed to the air and it starts to oxidize. Okay. There we go. Okay, so we're going to go in and kind of blend that out a little bit, and we're going to go with our lightest E50 or E50. I'm going to go in and push a lot of that ink at the back, because this would be very much in shadow. Same with underneath kind of the lip of our apple here. So I'm just going to shade it a little bit and get rid of the white. Again, go back here. It's going to be in shadow, all this edge here. This, I'm assuming the light's kind of coming this way. He's going to cast a little bit of a shadow on the base. Again, I'm just kind of softening all those edges. And of course, this is all kind of your made up story. Tell yourself a story about where the light's coming from, what kind of apple it is, all that fun stuff. Let's go in and add some texture to our apple. I'm actually going to bring in one of our darker markers. This is the one that we used for our pumpkin. And I'm going to literally pockmark it. You know how some apples kind of have like this spotty texture to them, like super fine little dots and spots? That's exactly what I'm going to do to this apple, just for whimsical sake. Okay, and of course, this is not meant to look realistic. I mean, we're kind of going there. I'm doing a little bit more pockmarking or texture, doing underneath, and it will help kind of make that underside look deeper and darker too. Same with kind of in the stem here. There we go. A few on that outer edge. Dot, 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 and make it random. Like, you don't want to be dot, dot, dot in a row, because then typically nature is not like that. Okay, before we forget here, let's go and do our stem. I'm going to make it really easy. E25. We're just going to go a little bit in the base, tiny bit on one side. Oops. E23. And we're going to call it done. Like, super easy. Okay. All right. Our mice. Next, we're going to work on sweaters. Okay. I'd like to bring in some more green. So YG93. We're going to do a base coat for this one first. Okay. Make sure you get up and around his hair, his fur. I'm going to do cuffs, I think, a different color. So we're just putting a base down of green. There we go. And then we're going to add our shadow in YG95. So there'll be a tiny bit of shading kind of underneath his ear, a little bit down the back of his neck. Definitely underneath the belly. A little bit kind of down his shoulder because his arm is kind of up on his cheek. And a little bit there. Now I'm going to go back with my lighter color, YG93, and just kind of blend that out first before we do anything else. My YG95 has kind of a weird texture to it. That's okay. Okay. We're going to bury that texture anyway. YG97. So this time, I'm just going to rotate because my pattern will just come out a lot easier if I do this. So I'm going to start with a line, a stripe, and following his body lines. Okay. Then I'm going to do his shirt. Make sure you follow those body lines because the pattern would bend around his elbow. We forgot his other elbow. It's okay, we'll come back to it. And then to make it look knitted, we're gonna do just along the cuff here first, underneath here first, and then you just kind of start with V's, arched V's, like such. You can use them as big or as small. I mean, he's gonna have a little tiny sweater, so they can't be too big. And you're just kind of making like little leaf shapes, more or less speaking. And that's just indicating sweater texture, right? So it looks knitted. So you're putting the shadow in, and the top, or the later layer, is the top of the thread, making that. And I'm going in a V, so let's see, all the ones are going this way, and then my next row is a different direction. So make your leaves into V's. And then of course proceed down his arm, making that pattern wrap around. Okay, and then make V's again. And don't forget the other one. Okay, I'm just going to go in quickly, color in his other arm here. Oh, wrong end. This one's going to be very, very dark because it's going to be in shadow, so I'm not even really going to put much texture to it at all. There we go, color done. Because it's so much in shadow. All right. I think we'll put an orange sweater on this little fella. So I'm going to go back to the colors that I've previously used. So actually, let's go right back to our lightest. And the reason why I start with the lightest this time is because you got to shade your item, like your coat or whatever you're coloring, first before. I'm going to go right over his buttons. I'm going to make it easy because I'll go dark buttons. So I'm putting my base coat down first. Okay. Then I'm going to shade it, and then the pattern goes over top the shading. Why 3/8? So anywhere where there's going to be shadow, that's where I'm putting this orange. It's gonna have a little bit of a shadow on his shoulder, and he's got his hands in his pocket. How stinking cute is that? Okay, we'll put a little tiny bit down this edge as well. He's gonna have a little bit on his collar, because his head is going to cast a shadow there. And I think I will go one more darker. I think we will go YR18, and I'm not going to bother uncapping the other end because this is going to be teeny tiny. Tiny. You can even go underneath those buttons too. They cast a little bit of a shadow. This one is really dark, so just have to use it sparingly. Just a little bit on the top of that. There we go. And then I'm going to go back to my medium tone and blend this out. Just thickening that line a little bit. Down that color again. Again, don't worry about those buttons because we're going to go right over top of them with something. something dark, like a dark brown or something. There. Okay, and then I'm going to go right back to our lightest. And that's just going to help blend everything out, going right over top my entire image. And that just helps blend everything nicely. And then for this guy, I think we'll go back to our very, very darkest YR18. And we will do a pattern. So this time I'm going to do, and you could do this with like colored pencils too, if you didn't think that you could go in with a design with such a broad tipped marker, because sometimes your markers can get, your nibs can get a little fatter at the end. You could definitely go in and do your pattern with something that's easier to use on a finer scale. Just make sure you get all the things. So his sleeve is in his pocket, so the design is going to change shape and arch around the elbow. Again, I'm not going to worry too much about those buttons right now. And we're just going to put that pattern in right over top. Okay. Just trying to follow the body curves and the pattern at the same time. Yep. And I'm not going to worry about his collar. Let's just call it orange. There we go. Again, just following the curves of his elbow. And that pattern is going to curve up. There we go. Da, 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 da. So cute. I mean, it's sometimes it's about the little things. Let's go in and do his buttons. I'm gonna go fairly dark and go E39. Or sorry, E37. And again, this covers up that orange, so you don't have to be finicky about your coloring. And it covers up just fine. Okay. More onto the mice. All right. For the mice, I am going to start dark. E33. And we're going to map out all of the detail that is going to be in shadow. And again, this side of his ear is going to be pretty much in shadow. This one, not so much. I'm just going to accentuate just a little bit for him. This side of his ear is definitely going to be in shadow, because this side of his face, remember I said the light's coming from this direction. So we're going to accentuate the arch of his nose. Just drawing in a really, really faint line of hair. We're going to go underneath his chin just a tiny bit, just down underneath the nose too, because that's going to be in shadow. I'm going to go around his eyeball. And we're going to do a little bit on this side too. Okay, we're going to leave his chest lighter. So go underneath the jacket because it's going to cast shadow. This side of his body is going to be very much in shadow. Okay. And I might do his tail a slightly lighter color. And his feet a little bit lighter. Go and accentuate that. I'm going to go down underneath his eye too, now that I look at that. Okay, I'm just coming into the his schnozola. So cute. Okay. Gonna go E31. This is our mid-tone. We're gonna go in and soften some of those darker areas, blending out our shadow like such. We're going to completely color that ear. We're going to come up and do this ear and definitely that ear. We're going to go in with some color here into that brow. I'm going to leave kind of a line down his forehead. We're going to color in pretty much this side of his face and a little bit underneath, leaving a highlight on that side. You can always come in and add some more texture and detail. Just putting down color. I'm going to leave a little bit of highlight on that side of the leg. And this one isn't going to have any highlight at all. It sits too much behind his body. Okay. Because this one is quick, I'm just going to single cap it. Just blending a little bit between those two colors down his schnozola and a little bit on his leg. There we go. Let's go back to our E33 again. And I'm just going to go in and put a little bit more of that hair detail in that we've lost through the blending process. And we're going to do, there we go. And I'm going to accentuate the hairs here. Put a little bit kind of like across his forehead, not too much. A little bit down under his ear. A little bit of texture on this side of his face with just a tiny bit of texture on the other side. A little bit longer. Just kind of think about how the hair would sit and what direction you would put it. Kind of flowing. We're going to do a tiny bit here. Just a tiny inkling there. There we go. Okay. Beautiful. I've left his feet kind of light. I think I'll go in with our lightest, our E30, and color them light, as well as his tail. Just kind of kiss it with that color. We're going to go in and actually do the inside of his ears, E30. Sometimes I do all pink, but sometimes I like putting that skin tone down, because if you look, cat's ears, mice ears, things like that, they have like that skin tone, but then they have like a pink tone too, because they tend to have a lot of capillaries in them. So you just kiss it with that R20, and it also helps to blend too when you pre-moisten your paper. And then we're going to go in with our cute little pink nose like such. For his belly, we're going to use some E40s. We're going to start with our darker E41. Okay, so shadows are going to be underneath his jacket, just a little bit on this side, down this side because of his shape of his body. Definitely underneath that chin, as it casts a shadow on his body. And I'm just indicating just a little tiny bit of texture there. Sometimes you can leave it with just an E41. I'm going to soften it with a little tiny bit of E40 and just soften those lines. That's it. Done! So let's go and do our secondary mouse exactly the same. All right, I think we'll put some red on his cuffs. All right, eyeballs. Let's do those. Okay, I'm going to start with an undertone of blue for both. Okay. Then we are going to go cold or cool grays. And mice have pretty dark eyes, so I'm not even going to shade these. I'm just going to leave a little crescent shape for highlight. And that's it. And that just helps them make them look rounded. There we go. And the blue just makes them shine a little bit better. All right. Just have to figure out background. All right, the ground. We're going to put a little bit of a shadow underneath all of our good stuff here. So sorry, this is an E31. Put it underneath the walnut. Kind of underneath our mousy mouse. Just laying down a base color first. Okay. Underneath our second mousy. And underneath our apple. There we go. We're going to go all the way underneath that walnut. There we go. Okay. We're going to accentuate the shadows underneath our objects, E43. So if the light is coming from this way, it's still going to cast a shadow underneath, but it's definitely going to cast a shadow back this way. So his leg is going to cast a shadow. Under his belly is going to be in shadow. He's going to have a shadow here, and this, of course, is underneath his body. So that's also going to be in shadow. This guy is going to have a shadow kind of underneath his feet and a little bit past. Definitely underneath that tail. And this apple is going to have a shadow underneath pointing the other direction. There we go. I'm just going in with another coat in those very much darker spots. Shadow is always going to be darker at the base, wherever your item is touching the ground. Okay. Tiny bit going to be darker back here, just because his whole body is going to be casting a shadow. And again, underneath that apple. Okay, and there's going to be a little bit back here too underneath that pumpkin. Pumpkin, I'm just going to assume, is one of those squishy ones. There we go. Next, we're going to do our green base. And I am going to overlap a little bit into that brown. Just putting a good dose of it down. I'm going to go right in between these little fellows. There we go. Again, I'm overlapping that brown with my green. Just helping blend those two together. Don't forget back here. Could even do a little bit higher. Or you could do a mountain or a hill. Okay, do all of our foreground. Right out to the edges. I like the look of that brown undertone. So I'm just making sure I get over all my brown since I've decided to basically do that. There we go. Okay, on to the next part. Okay, we're going to deepen and darken some of our greens here. YG03. There we go. I'm just going over my YG. I'm going to go back into the distance there, because things that are in the background are going to be a little darker and grayer. So I'm going to go right in, and we're going to bring this green in here as well. Doesn't have to be perfect. There we go. I like to leave a little bit of highlight in that grass. Okay, we're going to deepen and darken those greens even more. YG63. And of course, this is kind of all by feel and kind of wherever floats your boat. I'm going to go back in behind. This one is a little bit more desaturated, so it's a little bit more gray. Go in and add a little bit more green in underneath him. That'll help darken the shadows as well. By adding that green in. Go right over top. And I am just going to soften this just ever so slightly back here. Just these blended just a little bit. There we go. Okay. So apparently I didn't get footage finishing off my card, so I just thought I'd go in and explain. For my background, instead of doing a blue sky, I thought, let's try something a little different. So I started off with a base of Y11. And then I went in and added some kind of yellowy clouds with a Y13. And then right over top of that yellow background, I added some dead grasses with E31 and E33. And then because this guy was looking down, he needed something to look at. So I added a cute little ant because he's making his way to that apple. And I stamped on a simple sentiment to finish off my card. Awesome. So thanks for joining me. I appreciate the time that you've spent with me today. I hope you've learned something, and I'll see you again soon.